Hi, everyone. Good morning. Nice to see you. Hi, Zay.
Hello.
This is my first VidCon, and I feel very old. And I'm going to go home and dye my hair blue. Do you notice everyone here has blue hair? And not the kind of blue hair we think of sometimes in other settings.
I've been to every single one of these, and I feel old.
You,
Yeah.
well, you're kind of considered the OG of this industry. And
Did you just throw gang signs?
I did. Is that?
What is happening?
Come on, you know, Lil Wayne and I are like this, Wheezy. But anyway, so tell me. I mean,
I'm like the less hip person on this stage.
No, believe me, you're not.
What
you're
happened?
Not. Is that an accurate assessment, though? Do you kind of feel like this is your baby?
I was definitely like right place, right time. I mean, had I sort of come of age 5 years earlier, there would have been nothing, no internet, no real web presence for me to publish into, and 5 years later, I just would have been like everybody else. So, there was a cluster of people that all sort of, they were like, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. Like, you can make things for the web, and you can see how it works, and all this sort of thing. And we had the fortitude to do it in relative poverty.
And when you started in 2001, as everybody knows, you did the How to Dance Properly birthday invitation.
These chairs are very lean back.
Well, relax then.
Okay.
I guess you became one of the first viral sensations, right? I mean, you were sort of baby cha-cha all grown up in a way. And you say after that started happening and that exploded and you were getting emails from all over the world,
yep.
I read that you said you became so obsessed with popularity. What was that period of your life like, and how did it ignite sort of what happened in the years that followed?
So it wasn't popularity in terms of like, sort of craving personal fame. It was actually the mechanics of popularity. Like I was very aware that shouldn't have happened. Like the How to Dance Properly was not great content, right? And Jonah had a similar thing, right? He was actually on your show and you interviewed him around with the Nike sweatshop email and all that kind of thing. And Jonah and I met that year, and we sort of realized, we were like, oh my gosh, this new mechanic like can make the wrong people famous. Like, we're the wrong people. We have to figure out how to do this, right? And so I was really obsessed with the mechanics of it. And the other piece of it that I experienced during that email time, where I couldn't refresh the email fast enough, was the similarity of the comments, like of the emails. They kind of clustered around 3 or 4 or 5 major types of emails, and often using the same words like, oh my gosh, why do you have so much time on your hands? Or like these sort of like clusters, and I was like, wow, everybody's kind of the same. And it was the ushering in that phase that we now are very familiar with, which is you type something into Google, like, why is there a bump on my knee? And it auto-completes before you're done. You're like, oh my gosh, there's other hypochondriacs just like me, right?
Right.
And it's that movement towards humanity sort of re-falling in love with itself, because we start realizing how similar we are in all these different ways. That was the real underlying obsession.
And did that plant the seed for the way you, in a interesting way, you almost use psychoanalysis to kind of determine these buckets of what encourages people to share certain content. Talk about that and sort of what you have kind of zeroed in on in terms of sort of personal identity and all the different framework that you've noticed and that you utilize to create content.
Right. So the first thing I would point out is that the media itself is deeply psychological. Like when you go to a movie, like you are experiencing something that is fascinating, which is that you're appropriating other people's feelings and lives and all that kind of stuff, right? So what I started to look, or our group broadly, and me as a really small part of it, we started to look at why people share media with each other, and it became obvious that they weren't saying, here, I'm giving this for you to consume. They were rather saying, this media is part of a conversation I'm having with you. And so one of the facets is that people use media to express who they are. So I share something with you, and I'm using it as a way to let you know about who I am, whether I'm left-handed or all these kinds of like different facets of who I am. And in the reverse, I can also use media to signal that I appreciate a part of you. So if you like dachshunds, I might share something with a dachshund in it. And this, you know, I mean, everybody can easily sort of look at this by just watching what you say when you share something, right? Oh my gosh, this is totally me. Oh my gosh, this is totally you. Never thought anyone thought this way before.
You call that something like identity?
Yeah, identity is one of the vectors for how we use media to converse with one another.
And then there are other ways too.
There's many other ways. In fact, this is very rough-hewn. I mean, these categories are not very scientific. We use data and sort of science-y sort of things to help us refine the questions, but ultimately it's, you know, people are very savvy about emotion and why we love each other and why we apologize to each other and things like that. That's not something science needs to help you on.
So is the goal then to have the broadest audience? You know, if you want something shared by the most number of people, like you, I know, have mentioned weird things couples fight about, right?
Yeah.
And has that been so shared because so many people relate to it? I know you said that they use it as a way to have conversations.
So the reason that it was shared so much is that so many people use it to relate to each other, not relate to it. So the point being that, you know, so the weird arguments that couples have is part of a really interesting framework. It's almost like a triangulation framework where the media sets up the person who you would share it with, right? Couples, significant others.
Right.
And then it sets up a pattern of interactions that are normal to that relationship all over the world, which is you get into arguments, right? But necessarily, if you have like 10 argument examples, you're going to leave out, you know, the ones that are significant in that person's relationship. And so the share is like, hey, honey, check this out. They missed the one when the dog poops on the carpet, and we fight about who has to clean it up, right? So in that sense, it's not the perfect video about relationships. It's the perfect opportunity to talk about yours, right? And so I would just sort of say that you know, the breadth of the audience, it really depends on the impact that you're trying to make. If you're trying to make someone, you know, people smile, yeah, you want giant paths, right? Like, you know, it has to travel everywhere. Jordan Peele, who's an advisor to us, you know, he said that when you're doing comedy or things that are laughter-based or smile-based, you know, when 10 people laugh, it's better than if one person laughs, right? However, if your impact is, for example, a statement like, I want to serve people who have been underserved by media. And I just mean that the way that media has been created tends to cast big wide nets, and we tend to, like, you know, regress to a mean because we're trying to keep audiences. And we have now a modern opportunity to show, like, let people recognize a version of themselves in media that have been left out. And
like?
That means body types, it means more racial diversity, sexual orientation, culture of origin. You know, it can also be personality types. We've cast the introvert for years as a nerd that wants to be an extrovert secretly. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people who like being introverts, who get a lot of power in being alone, all those kind of things.
Scrabble players who'd rather, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the notion of a party. Right? In television and film, we've been, you know, this idea of a party with red cups and a jock over there doing something crazy and a woman who, like, is shy and would look better with her glasses off. You know, like this, we just know that party. We've seen it over and over again, and yet there's many people whose idea of a great night with their friends is drinking a soft drink and playing board games, and there's power there.
So how does that translate to content creation, right? So you're looking at all these different groups and niche audiences as well as broader audiences. How does that inform the kind of content that you're creating?
In every way possible, right? I mean, it gives us, so the first thing is it allows us to lean in to the diversity of our own talent, our own staff. And we say, you know, like make stuff around your own identity, around identities that matter to you. And don't worry if it seems like it's niche, because chances are for almost everything, there's a huge group of people out there that have had a very similar experience or have a similar kind of background that are waiting for a piece of media to come along that they can really directly relate to. So, you know, signs you've been raised by Korean immigrant parents should not be a hit, but it is, right?
Right.
And so it directly influences it at all layers.
Let's talk about BuzzFeed Motion Pictures, because we don't have that much time and there's so much to talk about. You guys, you became the president of BuzzFeed Motion Pictures. First of all, why did you call it Motion Pictures? Because that's such an interesting sort of retro term, and I know it incorporates, Zay, everything that you do video-wise. So now, why not just call it BuzzFeed Video?
I mean, Motion Pictures sounds a lot cooler.
Well, it does sound kind of retro, though. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a wink and a nod, right? I mean, so there's a couple pieces that went into it, and one was that Muybridge, right, the guy that did the horse, it was, you know, thought of as the great grandfather of the film and things like that. Like, if you look at that horse galloping, that's an animated GIF. He is the father of the animated GIF, not of the feature film, right? And the notion, like this retro term, motion picture, is actually, it has now been appropriated to mean something very, very specific and almost arbitrarily specific. It's like a movie that lasts between this and this that has theatrical release and blah, blah. But really, like moving images, this is, right now, we are experiencing the greatest time in the history of media for images that move. And they start at animated GIFs and they go all the way out to that long form. So, you know, when that was the reasoning, was kind of reappropriating that word, taking it back. And then the bumper that we have is a little corgi that we shot in exactly the same style as Muybridge's horse. So that was like the little extra piece that we put on it.
So why did you want to go into this area, and what's your ultimate goal here? I mean, I know that Jonah has said we don't
Why did I want to go into television and film? So why did you want to go online? Like, what happened?
What happened? How?
Yeah, I don't know. Like you're like in like online media now, and I'm like looking at like the mechanics of television and film. Like, did we cross each other at some point?
I think
we should have
might
like high-fived as we like walked by or something like that.
Well,
I mean, what's your experience like? What do you when you're?
Zay and I said next year he can interview me because that would be interesting.
Next year. I thought you said like.
No, I said, but no. I mean, I'll answer that. Obviously, you know, people are consuming things very differently, and I had done pretty much everything that I could do in television news.
Yeah.
And I wanted the flexibility, the real estate, quite frankly, the lack of structure that digital media could give me. Mm-hmm. And so as a result, I'm playing with all different formats. I'm doing 20-minute mini documentaries on Harper Lee's new book. I'm doing 45-minute interviews with the presidential candidates, where you can't really see anywhere else, where we actually talk about the issues, and I'm not trying to just get a soundbite or a headline. I'm talking to disruptors, and so thank you, that one person who's been watching.
There you go. That's more like it.
So that's why it appealed to me. But so
I'll answer your question, Ray. I mean, because the reason I asked that was because my hunch is that fundamentally there's a similarity there, and for me, you know, my experience in online media kind of hit a threshold where it was apparent that the movement into the upmarket media space meant that I would have to, like, not just me, but all creative talent that kind of grew up in this, you know, digital-first environment would have to sort of forego or give up the work style that was natural to them. So what I mean is that, you know, the people that are coming to LA right now to start a creative career, they have YouTube channels, they have, you know, Instagram accounts, they're used to looking at data, they're used to interacting with fans, and then they come, and then the traditional media cycle would have them kind of write by themselves, you know, on a 6-month development deal for something that might be released 2 years from now, or drive across town over and over again to auditions. It's just not natural. So the idea behind this studio was from a talent perspective to realign the production process around incubating talent in the way that they like to work.
Right.
And then two, change the process. Like the way that media is created is still very industrial. It's like a big assembly line, like, you know, very specific roles that just do their thing. But, you know, the tools these days are cheap. You can learn them fast. More generalists, more fluid roles. So you can have people that are behind the camera, in front of the camera. And, you know, there's some of our, you know, incredible talent is here in the room, and they're going to be speaking later. And they're, you know, some of them came in thinking they wanted to be directors, and now they're like stars, and they're incredible, like in front of the camera. And then the third piece is distribution. There's a modern mechanic for distribution. The costs associated with distribution have forced these models into sometimes very strange relationships with tax credits in states and set pieces and like lumber costs to offset those. So that was the idea, is that there was, like you said, there was a limit to the possibility space that we were in the digital first world. And, you know, now we're in environments where we can try all these different things.
And you're so much more nimble, say, than a Hollywood studio. So you can almost use this as R&D, and I know that that's what, you know, Michael Schamberg, who's come in as an advisor, who produced Pulp Fiction, Garden State, and Aaron Brockovich, right? So
Fish Called Wanda, too.
A Fish Called Wanda. Okay,
Love
good.
that.
Yeah, and so what role is he sort of saying you want to be the AntiStudio Studio in a way? And how are you using BuzzFeed and all the analytics and all the freedom and creative freedom that BuzzFeed affords as kind of a testing ground for things that actually have potential to become, say, features or regular series?
Yep.
Tell us about that.
Well, we're learning. I mean, we're learning how to test and learn towards those goals. It's not totally clear that there's a linear progression between short form and features, but you know, we produce so much content right now. I think 75 short form videos a week, 100 pieces of micro content. You know, and so that in and of itself is an engine by which you can ask some questions. And so for example, we can do casting in our short form, not as pilots, but rather we can just see, like, how does the audience relate to these people? We can, you know, incubate and innovate in-house talent, and they just get better at filming, and they're asking all these different kinds of, you know, questions about the things that they would make. So I think there's
And then
a
you
sort of
test them, you say, do people find this appealing? Do they like these characters? Is
That's
this
right.
something that could be ongoing? Is this something that can be expanded?
Yeah, I mean, there's almost every single piece of content that you see is part of some line of questioning. Like there's almost no content that goes out that's just like, hey, we want to make something that goes big, like, and here's the secret sauce. No, it's questions like, wow, people are watching more and more media with the sound off. What is a post-literate future? Like, what does media look like that, you know, can you do narrative
Going
without
back to
sound?
silent movies,
It's
right?
crazy. We're going all the way back. Yeah.
And so, and I know that you're talking about how to get things that are more sort of shared internationally.
Yes.
I know that's something you're looking at. How is that influencing your choice and how you're putting together?
Well, so I mean, I would say that there's something hidden in some of the verbiage of these questions, which is, how does it affect the choices that I'm making about the studio? The really interesting thing is that we run a very kind of distributed and autonomous group. So I'm not making these content decisions. I might make sort of broad stroke, I might ask broad stroke questions and have sort of strategic visions about where we have to go, but really the producers are the ones that become fascinated with these things. So there's a lot of different attempts, and it depends on whether we're talking about Mumbai or we're talking about Australia. But definitely international, I think the piece that is most exciting for me is that it represents the possibility for a much more interesting cultural exchange, where we can really start, you know, speaking to each other through countries. So in Mumbai, you know, they recently did, we have a few people there, and they did just a simple kind of like, you know, taste test of American snacks or something like that. And blogs picked it up as not because it was funny or because of the content itself. They just said, it's nice that Americans get to see what real Indian teenagers look like. And I agree. And there's something just in that movement that I'm really excited about it in terms of our expansion.
Let's talk about the business model, because like you look at some place like Netflix, right? They have a subscription model, so they can afford to hire Kevin Spacey and David Fincher and have high production costs. So I guess the question is, if you expand, right, to some of these more feature-length films, or if you're going to be doing these series, how are you going to pay for them?
Well, there's a great precedent in Hollywood to use other people's money.
When that runs out.
When other people's money, well, you get other friends. Yeah. No, I mean, so it is a great question, and partially, I think that film and television at the very top are really, amazing things. They're feats of culture, and I do think that in the sort of middle tier of that sort of finance bracket, there's opportunities to do some tuning of the economic model so that you're not spending as much on marketing, right?
Right.
We have a giant footprint.
Well, I was going to say, you have a built-in marketing, promotional department with all your existing content that you can say, hey, we're making a movie, and start generating interest and excitement for that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So to answer your question, there's lots of different business models that can exist. We're sort of interested in all of them.
Well, what's the most interesting one to you?
The most interesting
Because,
one.
I mean, when you look at the ad dollars, right, they're just still not there as much for television as they are for online content, right?
Yeah, I still believe that there's a lot of work to be done in advertising and marketing. I think that we love brands as culture, but we hate advertising. There's a disconnect there, and bringing brands into the story of creating content, having consumers' expectation for the level of sort of connectivity and quality that brands are the content that brands are making is exciting to me. I don't know. I'm excited by all of it. Like syndicated television is like fascinating to me. Like it feels sort of like a more honest business. Like you go out there and you say, hey, do you want to buy this? Yeah. Okay, great. I have a little bit more money to make more of them. Like the parts that I don't love are these sort of like futures markets and auctions and where you're floating so much risk and then something flops and a lot of people get hurt by it, right? I mean, that feels less interesting to me.
Well, and I think you're trying to put safeguards in place, right, where that doesn't happen, as much as you can,
that's
right?
I mean, I would really love an economic environment where people, when their children said, hey, Mom, I want to be an actor, that you didn't like sort of throw up in your mouth, right? Because you were worried about your child, because you knew that the industry is very, very hard, and there's very, very little chances. And I would love an industry where there's real careers, there's real places to incubate talent, where the expectations of like crazy, crazy wealth aren't there as much as real great sustainable careers where you're focused on creativity and making things. Like that feels like a really great future to me.
Right, it does, but how do you mix that? Well,
I
you
got
it in the
3
clock
people
here.
that clapped at that concept. That's the most that has happened for
only
me
one
all
person.
night. Thank you. It was you, and I can even identify 2 people.
And that's
awesome.
great, but you do have to marriage art and commerce, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and how data driven are you? And I know that you kind of bristle at the notion of that.
I only bristle at it because I think that people, when people hear the word data, they think cold, stark, calculated, decision making that has no humanity in it.
And your point is?
That's what I like to do. Like, that's part of the future. It's just I want a button that I press and I want it to fart out some media and just like. No, I mean, but I ultimately got all the data in the world isn't going to tell you what to make, but it can help you when you have a couple different options in front of you. It can help you make choices. So media is about people. It's about emotions. It's about feelings, and that's what we're great at. That's what gut is. But data can help you start to see patterns and trends and like start to reveal certain things that are hidden. So that's how we use it.
And in fact, you gave a very successful TED Talk last year asking the question, are you human?
Yeah.
And that was the point behind that, right?
Right.
Well, that wasn't a very good question, was it?
And scene.
When you look at the landscape 10 years from now, you think about YouTube just celebrated.
Do we get as much
10th
time as we
anniversary.
want?
I don't know.
Is that
They
the
told
idea?
me there was a
I think
clock
we've
here,
been talking
but I
for
don't
20
see
minutes.
a clock.
Yeah, I think we've literally been abandoned on this stage.
Yeah, everyone said there was going to be a clock. I have no idea how much time we have. We can go on for maybe a few more minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. When you look, say, at the landscape 10 years from now,
Yeah.
you know, what do you think it's going to look like? Is television, is it all going to meet in the middle somehow? Is it, you know, is there such a thing as too much content? Are we going to drown in a sea of content? You know, how do you see it shaking out?
You know, I'm not totally sure. I know that as humans we're like terrible at predicting the future. You know, we're terrible about even predicting our own evolution of tastes and how we're going to be. So I'm less trying to future-proof our organization. I'm more trying to understand what kinds of processes feel right in terms of, you know, being able to adapt to change and kind of move quickly and things like that. I mean, my guess is that there's going to be one of the big shifts is that the sort of middle is dropping out of the media creation market, right? So the bundle, right, selling a package deal around the one thing that everybody wants, that's kind of collapsing now, right? And that means that the economics for a lot of like reality programming is going away, right? So a lot of these people that have been making the programming that, you know, was on these, you know, random cable channels and stuff like that actually got lots of usage in toto, that's going away. So, but the content needs are escalating over time. So I think that the top of the market stays, you know, where it is and is stable, and I think we're going to have wonderful films and wonderful TV programming that looks like TV. But I think that middle is going to change quite a bit, and it's going to be occupied by a lot of a big, diverse swath of content. And then what's exciting to me is that I think at the very bottom of the market, you know, things like these, you know, Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook are ushering in a whole wave of content that's quite short, that is not just about consumption, and we don't have, you know, arguments about quality and all this kind of stuff, but it serves as a way for people to fluidly talk to each other and ends up being a big anchor to culture.
Do you think that longer form content things are changing? You know, the conventional wisdom is that people don't want to watch long form content online.
Well, they don't want to watch it all the time. You know, I do think that that people are going to get more and more comfortable watching long-form content in small screens, and that's just how it is. But I do think that there's going to be a big segmentation between media that you get lost in, and the goal is to lose oneself in, like literally like your identity is subsumed by the media, and that's like Game of Thrones, where like you're just identifying in this world and space. There's going to be a difference between that kind of media and then media where you the media and your social existence are exactly the same thing. And the way that I would describe this is this. When like if you're watching like a show or something like that on your phone, right? And then you put it down, you're kind of like, whoa, what just happened, right? Like you're halfway in as you return to your world, right? And you lost yourself. You were in that world. But you have a similar kind of experience when you're 20 minutes on Facebook before you go to bed. You put it down and you're like, whoa, it was a whole media experience, that 20 minutes. But you weren't in someone else's world, you were in your world. You saw familiar faces, you learned a little bit about other people's tastes and passions, you read their comments, and those are two very, very different propositions in terms of the value of media. And I think that second usage is going to be bigger and bigger, and more people are going to choose to be in those spaces when they have 30 minutes.